It is Trial Tuesday once again, and today we're exploring what happens when residents get in squabbles with law enforcement. Joining me this morning is the Sultan of Settlements and a leader of litigation, attorney David Aylor. And recently, David, a Mount Pleasant police supervisor resigned after getting into an argument with a resident over a traffic detour.
Right. It sounded like something that started fairly minor from, the news coverage that's come out on it, but ultimately it led to a veteran police officer leaving the force.
Yeah, he was there for a number of years. What I heard happen is that she called to lodge a complaint against him. He then took that complaint and actually lodged one of his own at the bank where this woman works.
Right, and that may be the point that it got a little out of hand. Obviously, as a public servant, there's going to be incidents where people are not going to be satisfied with whether it be an individual officer or maybe the police force as a whole, and that's their right. They're taxpaying citizens. They have the right to do that, but do the reverse and go back and file a claim against this person in their private setting, it's questionable. In
your opinion, as a legal servant, does he have to be held to a higher standard?
You know, he's held to the same standard that any of us are held to in regards to respect and the way to treat others. And I think what was at hand, at least from the complaint initially, was the way that he had treated this lady.
Yeah, let's walk through this investigation a little bit, because obviously they conducted an internal investigation at the Mount Pleasant Police Department. So how does something like that work?
Well, usually what happens is when there's an initial complaint, they'll take a look at it and determine whether they're going to do something internal, an investigation, or if they're going to turn it over to SLED. They don't always have to turn it over to SLED, but on the more serious incidents, they turn it over to SLED, which South Carolina Law Enforcement Division then comes in as a separate entity as a whole, and then they investigate it.
Because they can kind of remain unbiased a little bit, kind of give an objective opinion. Is that why they bring SLED in?
Correct. They bring in SLED because, you know, there may be criminal aspects or elements that are potentially involved, but also exactly that, so it doesn't look like that something's swept under the rug. However, there are oftentimes internal investigations done within the police forces on minor things.
Yeah. Does a department like Mount Pleasant have an IA, an internal investigation?
They have a mechanism for that, essentially. So when complaints are filed, there's going to be certain superiors within the force that are going to, review it. And it may be them that they actually make the call whether or not they're going to send it out to SLED.
Well, let's say something like this happens to an everyday citizen. How do you go about forming a complaint like that, then filing it with the police department, and hope that you don't get any blowback?
Well, the most important thing you need to do is make sure it's documented. Having conversations with folks over the phone, that sort of thing, saying that you're making a complaint is really going to be hard to come back to later. Often I've had people come into my office and try to file these with the assistance of counsel, and that can help. They're making it really steer you in the right direction. But what you have to make sure you do correctly is go down there and handle it matter-of-factly, not from an emotional standpoint. Because if you have issue, that's totally your right to do that. However, trying to really create some sort of stir or argument is really not going to get you anywhere productively wise.
Now, would you bring an attorney into that conversation, and how could they help you out if you wanted to go and file that complaint?
Well, it depends on how wronged you are. If there's a level of wrong where, there's some sort of civil rights violation or something that, goes beyond just a minor incident, that attorney would be able to advise you, and then they may themselves take over in filing in that process. However, if it's something more minor, you simply can go to the local police force yourself, ask to speak with someone, and then document the complaint. It actually happens all the time, and believe it or not, everyone is actually reviewed.
Yeah, and they definitely want to work these issues out before it gets to that SLED level, because that can take years or months.
Right, and when SLED comes in, I've been involved in several of their investigations. They're extremely thorough, so it is a little bit of a longer period of time, but they seem to always really get both sides of the story. This situation seemed to be one there in Mount Pleasant where two people were really gotten almost an interpersonal argument that just spurned from there.
All right, well, no complaints here. Attorney David Aylor, thank you for your time, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it, and we'll kick it over to Tessa.